Hi guys, it's Teresa. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to do a really quick December wrap-up. I only ended up reading 4 books in December, partly because I was still in a reading slump, partly because I was doing so many videos that I didn't really have time or wanted really to read all that much. And then obviously also the holidays, celebrating with family and all that kind of stuff. So there just kind of wasn't enough time to read, and that's okay. I said before, I don't really mind not reading a lot in December, considering all the year wrap-up videos that kind of require me to already have completed most of my reading so I can talk about it. But basically, I still read some books that I haven't really wrapped up yet. So without further ado, let's jump into it. If you've watched my channel for a while, you know I usually do stats, but when there's so few books, that doesn't really make sense. So again, we're gonna skip that for now, but I will be still doing a end of year wrap-up video where I do all the stats for the year. So stay tuned for that. So I didn't really have any bad books this month. I pretty much just read what I wanted to read and like what I wanted to enjoy. And so I am actually starting off the worst of December with 3 stars. And I have 2 books that I rated 3.5 stars. The first is A Brief History of Humankind by Yuval Noah Harari, which is a non-fiction book just giving a brief history of humankind. The title is kind of self-explanatory. I listened to this on audiobook. It's a pretty long book, and so it was kind of nice to have it just like in the background when I was like doing things, when I was like walking to uni or just like working on something. Like it kind of was really nice to have as background noise. Also because, and this is the reason I didn't rate it higher really, there were parts that I thought were kind of obvious, kind of stating the obvious a little bit, and if you've like had any education about the history of humankind, the kind of things that you would know. Like for example, trying to explain certain systems, like political and societal systems that were in place at certain times, where I felt like, yeah, I know, it's kind of logical, right? Not that that's a bad thing. I think in some cases it can be quite beneficial to state the obvious, but to me, those parts just turned a little bit dull and dragged a little bit, and I didn't really care as much about them. My favorite part of the book, though, was basically the first section of it, where he talked about the way back history of our species, pretty much, and I thought it was really interesting because that part I don't really know much about. So if you already consider yourself to know like the bare bones, like a little bit maybe, the bare bones and a little bit of meat of our history, I don't think this is going to be a very revolutionary book for you, but if you want a refresher or you like really don't know anything, I really recommend this one actually. My second 3-star read, or 3.5-star read, is also a non-fiction book, and this is Rewire Your Anger by Chris Boutte. If you've been watching my videos, you will know in December I did a collab with Chris Boutte, who is actually a YouTuber. His channel is called The Rewired Soul, and he asked me if he could send me a copy of his book about anger management, which he just came out with. It's just a really short ebook. You can get it on Amazon if you want. Basically, with the intention to provide people with basically tools to handle their anger if that's something they're struggling with. I don't fall into that category, I can tell you. I pretty much have the opposite problem. I'm extremely non-assertive in a lot of ways. In my personal life, it's not that bad, but like in professional settings, I am meek as shit. You might not believe it, but it is the case. And I hate it. I want to change that. So this book is kind of like addressed to the people that are very much the opposite of me, right? That are very quick to get angry when things don't go their way, whereas I pretty much will always take the back seat in those situations. And still, I managed to get something out of this book. Actually, I think because I am kind of like the opposite of people with anger management issues, some of the parts of this book spoke to me as well, because it was kind of saying, don't think so much about yourself. And I think when you are very shy or like anxious in social situations, that's usually because you think a lot about yourself, because you think other people think a lot about you, and then you question that and re-question it and just like get stuck in this tornado of basically considering yourself the center of the universe and everybody's judging you, when that's not really the case. And that's why I found this book so interesting, is because I'm not even the target demographic, I'm not even the target audience, and still I felt like I got something out of it, and I really like that. I will say This book is a debut novel, it's self-published, and because of that, there wasn't really an editor involved, and there's some like typos, there's structural errors, like with chapters that should be chapters not really being a chapter, or like other things that shouldn't be a chapter but your own chapter. That was a little bit confusing, but since it's not that long, I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's not something that actually detracts from the overall value of the book. So I think if it sounds interesting to you and you want to give it a try, do that, but just keep in mind that it's just like not the best piece of literature as such, I guess. But that's not what it's intending to be anyway, so we're all good here. Then we finally get into some physical books that I read this month, and the first is a 4-star read, and that is The Fifth Season by n.k.jemisin. Now, this book is very hyped on YouTube, BookTube, whatever. It's very, very popular. It's kind of a mixture of sci-fi and fantasy. It's set in a world pretty much where the Earth has turned against humans, and it has destroyed civilization after civilization by sort of natural disasters, and those are always called the fifth season. It's kind of like an extended winter or some sort of disaster that occurs that starts a period of time of something or other, like, for example, volcanoes erupting or like earth shakes happening and stuff like that, that pretty much make it almost impossible to survive. But some civilizations have, and this current civilization that we follow has been sort of strong for I don't even know, like 10 seasons or something like that. They've survived a ton of these fifth seasons, so they're considered pretty strong. And in this civilization, we have a kind of stratified society where there's the stills, the normal people pretty much, and then we have origins. And origins are born with the capabilities to sense motions of the earth. They sense earth, they can influence the movements of the earth, and they can still shakes, for example. They can stop an earthquake. And so based on that, you might think that they're highly regarded in society, but actually they are oppressed, they are discriminated against, and they're pretty much used as tools by the government to, you know, take care of like the earth shakes and stuff like that, but in a very, very controlled situation. There's a question of control, like if origins, all of them can control themselves. If you're found to be an origin, you're taken to the fulcrum in the main city and trained there to gain control over your powers and then use them to the government's gain, pretty much. And so in this book we follow several perspectives, all of which are pretty much from the perspective, if I remember correctly, of an origin, which are also called rogas as a derogatory word in this book. If that sounds familiar to something else, then I don't think that's incidental. And most of these perspectives are from the third person, written from the third person, but there's one that's written in the second person, so it continuously addresses you as you, and it drove me up the wall. If you saw my reading vlogs, you know that I absolutely despise this style of writing. It takes me out of the story, it breaks my immersion, it makes me uncomfortable to be talked to in a second person, to have the book tell me that it's basically talking about me, and I just don't like it. And I do know that in this book particularly, it serves a purpose. There's a reason why. It's not just for fun and games, but that doesn't change my absolute hatred of it. I cannot stand it. I hated those chapters, not because of the content was fine and even interesting. I just really, really couldn't force myself to read it. And I know that the sequels are similar. There's gonna be chapters written in the second person, or even all of it. I don't even know yet. And I still want to read them because I want to know what happens next, but I am not on board. I just need to say that. It's not gonna change anything about anything. It's just, I can't do it. Another thing that I kind of didn't like about this book is the way that it is structured as a narrative. As I've said, it does follow several perspectives, but they're not taking place at the same time, and you're not being told when they're taking place, and so it's very confusing. The book pretty much says itself, it starts at the end of the world, but then it jumps back in time to a random point in time that we have no idea where it is, and you do get a more full picture of everything that's happening throughout the book. Like, more and more you start to piece the pieces together, and it kind of becomes more clear as you go, but that doesn't change the fact that you start off this book in utter confusion, and it lasts for a significant amount of time, and I was not a fan of that. I think the author was trying to make it more suspenseful and to make you care a little bit more about what's happening, which I do appreciate, and I do think that's partly the case, or partly the result. But overall, I was really, really not on board. I just felt like this isn't world building. Like, you're trying to make it seem like making this the most confusing it can be is world building, when that's really not the case. Similarly to that, there were a lot of expressions used that are just like random made up words to describe, for example, feeling the earth, like the earth shakes, is called to sess. And I mean, that's one of the easier ones I can kind of guess. But overall, there were so many words used, like sesapine, which are apparently organs in your brain, parts of your brain that can help, that like facilitate this sessing. Like, I get it now. But like, starting off this book, no one told me that. And there wasn't enough context in one place, like consolidated in one place, that would let me guess at it. So for like several chapters, I was confused. And most people would be confused. I believe that it's on the author to have to explain the world to me. You don't have to spell it out, but you do have to make it clear enough for me to guess it, or like sort of get the overall thing. And I think if it had just been the expressions separate from the story, like if the structure of the story wasn't already so confusing, I probably wouldn't have cared as much about the words being not explained. But as a combination of the two, it drove me crazy. Add to that, there's not just words and not just the structure, but also concepts in this world that were not explained at all. And then the characters, there were several scenes where the characters just like encounter something, and at first they're confused, and then the situation they encountered continues, and they're like, oh, I get it now. And then that's it. And you don't get what they get. You are not given the information that they apparently have to deduce the meaning, the deeper meaning of that situation, because they have previous knowledge of their world, but you as a reader don't. So it's incredibly confusing, and there's this big disconnect between what you understand and what the characters understand, and that's also not really good for making you like invest in the story and for making you feel connected to a story. That being said, I really, really liked the story overall. I really, really liked the characters. I was really interested in what was going on all the time, partly because I didn't get it, but also just because it was really interesting. And I really liked the subtle but sort of impactful way that this book deals with discrimination that happens in our world in this world. Basically, this book is giving an allegory for racism, and it's doing it in such a subtle and like well-crafted manner that maybe you don't even notice it immediately, but it's definitely there. And it doesn't try to like actively draw attention to its cleverness either, which I love. And it's overall just really well written. It's a well-constructed world, even though you might not believe it at first. And I'm definitely gonna read the sequels. I'm just apprehensive about the writing style and the structure. And if you are somebody who already loves fantasy or sci-fi, I definitely recommend this book. But if you are not really yet into that genre, like you haven't really made it your own yet, I don't know if this is a good place to start, just because it's so frustrating and confusing at first, and you really need to have some level of perseverance to kind of make you through that initial hump. Wow, I talked so much about that book. I'm sorry, it's not that short of a wrap-up after all, I guess. But this last book I read this month was The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. I gave this book 4.5 stars. It was pretty damn good, even though I read it at a very inopportune time for me to really enjoy a book. This book is, as I've said, it's very similar to The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo in the setup. I believe The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is entirely a copy of the setup of this book. Basically, it follows a young woman. She's a biographer. She works not professionally, like in her kind of free time. She works in a bookstore that her father owns, and she's obsessed with books. And she sometimes writes biographies about dead people. But one day she gets a letter of a very famous author, modern day author, that she's actually never read anything by, called Vida Winter. She's basically lied to everyone about her life for the longest time now. And she invents stories. Whenever journalists ask her, she invents new stories of what happened to her and what she's been through. She's now like sick, and she's pretty much at the end of her life, and she's finally ready to divulge the truth. She's finally ready for the truth. And so she invites this young woman to live with her for a while so she can tell her her story. And the story takes us back to Angelfield House. And in Angelfield House, there were two siblings living there, a brother and a sister. they had some sort of incestuous relationship. It's not really spelled out, but we're kind of pretty sure. And then the sister also had a relationship with another guy and ended up having twins, Adeline and Emmeline, which Vida Winter is revealed to be Adeline, and basically retells the story of what happened at Angelfield House, because the twins kind of grew up as like feral children. Their mother left, was taken to an asylum. Their brother shot himself away. Their father, uncle, shot himself away, and kind of just like all the stuff that goes down there. And it's extremely suspenseful. There's plot twists everywhere that I didn't see coming. It's written very beautifully. Just like reading through the first few pages, I was obsessed with it. It's very subtle as well. It doesn't throw the plot twist in your face. It's not like, dun dun dun, oh my god, something crazy was just revealed. It's just like almost incidental, but it's still startling to you because you didn't see coming. There is a lot of crazy shit that went down at this house, and the people in it suffered a whole lot. And I thought it was really, really interesting. It jumps back and forth between the present and the past, and it also talks about the biographer's own past, because she pretty much also had a twin that died at birth, and she was never told about this. She only found out about this like when she was 10 or so. And so that's something that she's always carried around with her. So basically at its core, it's about two twin pairs and their experiences separately from one another, but then interweaving them again. And I just thought it was really, really well done. It's an extremely skillfully written book, I believe. It's extremely well done overall. It's so much better than The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo that it's not even worth a comparison. But if you think that book was good, read this one. Just do it. It's so much better. If you didn't think that book was good, also read this one. It's so much better. I really enjoyed it. I definitely recommend this to everyone. And if you haven't checked it out yet, you have to. And that is it for all the books I read in December. Only 4, but that didn't stop me from making this video way too long. I guess I just like talking about books. Who would have thought? Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what your December looked like. I know December reading wrap-ups kind of tend to not get the attention they deserve, because everybody's like, well, we already did the wrap-up thing for the whole year, so December is like not that interesting. But let me know what you read in December specifically. If there's any theme to your reading based on, for example, Christmas or anything like that, let me know. Please give this video a big thumbs up because it really helps out my channel, and subscribe if you haven't already. I upload videos every Tuesday and Friday and Sundays maybe. We'll see how it goes for the rest of January. I have so many videos planned that I might actually stick to the 3-day upload schedule now, so don't forget to click the notification bell so you're always up to date on that. I will see you very soon with another video. Until then, have a lovely week. Bye!